Hey, greeting aviators and aviation fans. This is Mike, the Chili Dog pilot. Hope you guys are doing well. We are knee deep in winter, all puns intended there. We recently had about 12 inches of snow with that last winter storm that came through the area. And with that was a nice Arctic blast, which is keeping temperatures below freezing, which is making the melting of snow and ice very difficult. So I spent the last day and a half digging out of my hangar to get the Tomahawk up and running. I had no plans to film anything today, but in light of some comments I received on the last video that I posted, which posted on January 31st, so basically yesterday, I wanted to go ahead and comment on a few things that a few other pilots have mentioned about my RNAV GPS 2.9 approach. I think they were all good comments. So what I want to say before we get into the comments, more than anything, is I just really want to thank those who provide constructive feedback. As pilots or as as a person in any endeavor, you should always be willing to learn and continue to improve your skill sets, take feedback from others, assess that, make corrections as needed. So in my case, some of it might have been complacency, some of it might have been an over-reliance on the instrument panels, and some of it might just be procedural. And so let's talk about those real quick, and then we're going to jump in and actually fly the approach again and kind of point out maybe the things that I could do better. So the first comment that I saw, I think was the first one that I received was really about on the procedure turn. You don't necessarily need to fly the 4-mile leg that's depicted on that procedure turn. All you really need to do is get yourself reestablished. So that's a good comment. I think a lot of people just tend to fly that. That's what I did in that approach. Two parts for the reason why I did that. And one was, that was just obviously what was depicted in the GPS, so it was just easy to fly that as I was kind of preparing for the approach itself. And yeah, the second part is it was pretty open in the airspace, so it wasn't a hindrance to anyone else for me to take up extra time. Now in real life, the reality is you probably will get directions from ATC whether or not they need you to fly a certain distance on that procedure turn outbound. Otherwise, it's whatever it takes to get you back established on the approach procedure. The second comment was probably the one that I even was just kind of replaying in my mind why I was doing it, because again, I flew this approach several weeks before the video posted, but the comment was basically questioning why did I remove the hold after the procedure turn and before the approach. And quite honestly, I don't know why, but it obviously makes no sense or no need to remove the hold, because the GPS is going to fly the approach unless you activate the hold. I don't know if it's just maybe been a habit because I've had times where the hold bloated when I was expecting to go the approach, and so me deleting it was just kind of a way to avoid that from happening. All that being said is, yes, I think from a procedural standpoint, you can leave the hold in there. The airplane will fly the procedure, and then if for some reason you were needing to stay in that hold or directed to stay in that hold, the two things you could do is hit the suspend button to suspend the procedure, and then the double take is you can activate the approach. So I think what we could do is play around with that in real life, see how both those processes would work, and what that would do from a from a hold standpoint. So I'm not going to fly the full approaches. I'm just going to do the entries into those. And then the last part, I guess I will fly the approach maybe on the last attempt, or last pass through, because the last comment, which is also a very valid one, is the first comment came from a user just basically pointing out that there was one additional fix on the approach. It was the fix of Zolro, so that's Zulu, Oscar, Lima, Romeo, Oscar, and it had an altitude fix. So that was an altitude fix on the approach prior to the MDA, and I didn't call it out, and I'll give you my excuse and the rationale why, but also point out why that should be paid attention to, as it is a fix. So in flying this approach, having the GI 275s and the WASP GPS, I am given a glide path indication to basically fly the glide path that would keep me above that fix. So by doing so, I was going to meet those altitude requirements. But all that being said, the correct thing to do is still call out that last fix, because that is a reporting altitude. And the other thing that another commenter made, which I think is also very important to realize here, is this is an LNAV approach. It is not an LPV approach. So that glide path is, helps you situationally, but it is not a glide path like you would have that's a WASP glide path on an LPV approach. So those are just a couple things I want to point out as corrections. So what I'm going to do now is we'll go ahead and jump in and refly this approach, and we'll talk through the things that we could have done better, or in the other case, maybe talk through a little bit about the procedures that I did, and what's the best method to get to those. So as you can see on the Garmin charts here, we are somewhere just north of the airport, and we are going to fly to Nino, which is the initial approach point. So again, from a brief standpoint, I have Nino set in as our transition point. I also have this indicated as an LNAV approach. So we are a Category A aircraft. So as an LNAV approach, our MDH is 540 feet. And we also know that the visibility required is 1 mile. So it's VFR day, so all that is fine for us currently. Now, as we get to Nino, again, we're going to do a procedure turn inbound. So the first thing I'm going to do is, hopefully this will show up for you, but here is the procedure turn as it's dictated in the GPS. So the initial approach fix is Nino. We'll get instructions on how to do the procedure turn. It should be a parallel entry. And then basically as we come back to Nino, we would proceed to the final approach fix of Rudju. And the altitude on Rudju is 1,600 feet. And then after that is Zulro, as we talked about, which we did not call out on that last approach. We were above it, but as good practice on an LNAV approach, we should call out all those altitudes. So Zulro, and that altitude is 980 feet, and then we can descend down to the MDA for landing. So the first thing I want to do is just reinforce, probably more for me than anyone else, is the fact that the GPS should cycle these waypoints without putting me on the hold. And I think to the point, to the point of the feedback given, is therefore avoid deleting that hold unnecessarily. Okay, folks. So we're 1.5 miles from Nino, which is our initial approach fix. We are going to do the procedure turn outbound. It should be a parallel entry. And then we will play around with how the GPS cycles things. Less of an issue in this airplane because it does not have an autopilot, so I'm hand flying any approach that we do. The system's going to work the same across all the Garmin panels, so we just want to make sure everything cycles properly. Okay, so we're now going to do the procedure turn outbound, so we're told to fly left at 108 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and put that bug in here. Okay, so this is also the first part of the conversation that we had is from a procedure turn standpoint, when you look at the procedure turn, that 4 miles, and I'll pull up the old chart, that 4 miles is the length of the hold. It's not the required amount of the hold, so what you could easily do is fly for 1 minute and then turn yourself back inbound. For I think today's practice, we will do that. So I'm just looking at the clock here. So we got about 50 seconds. Okay, so that's been about a minute. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we'll do our parallel turn entry back to Nino. And we're not going to touch anything on the GPS, and we'll show how, even though it has the hold at Nino in there, it's not going to activate unless we activate the hold.
Memo traffic, Terminal 2916 Whiskey, turning downwind 32, Memo.
Okay, so we just did the parallel entry back into the
turning base 32, Memo.
Into Nino, and then we will fly that approach back into Trenton Robbinsville. Okay, we're currently 2 miles from Nino, and our desired track now is 288. Okay, we are now passing over Nino in 0.2 of a mile, and we're already getting the instructions to continue on desired track of 288. So, as you can see here, it is putting us on the final approach. The glide slope indicator is coming in, and it is showing Rudju as the next procedure. Okay, so we will go ahead and fly outbound and re-enter, so that we will activate the hold the next time around and see how Actually, we'll hit suspend and see what is given to us once we do the procedure turn inbound. Okay, so we are back on the procedure turn outbound from the Nino intersection, which is our initial approach fix. We will this time hit suspend prior to getting back to Nino to see how the GPS will handle the guidance. Okay, so we're going to fly outbound for 1 minute, and then we will do the turn back into Nino, and then I'm going to hit the suspend button once we are back to Nino, and let's see what direction we get once we hit suspend. Okay, we are completing our procedure turn, and we are tracking back to Nino. We're about 1.8 miles from Nino, which is our initial approach fix. And now what we're going to see is what happens, at least what does the GPS command if I hit suspend currently. So I did hit suspend, and it looks, at least what it's depicting on the GPS is to go ahead and put us in the hold. So if we go to the flight plan, it's showing 4 nautical mile hold. Let's see what happens once we get to Nino and what's commanded here. Okay, so we are getting
4 miles to the north inbound, Monmouth.
Alright, so we're getting the direction to go ahead and make a right turn to 107, which is the hold leg, the outbound hold leg. Okay, so we'll go ahead and fly to 107. So we'll do 1 turn in the hold, then we will hit the unsuspend button and proceed with the approach.
Sound traffic, okay, 16 Papa, it's about 2 miles to the east, 3,000, we're on the VFD or Alpha Airflex, we'll be at or about 3,000.
Okay, so we're on the outbound leg of the hold, so we're going to fly the hold as published, which is 4 nautical mile legs, and then on the inbound, we will hit the unsuspend button, track and follow what happens. Okay, so we're on the hold turn inbound to Nino, and we will hit the unsuspend button, which will then cycle the approach for us. And what I'm going to do is I will go ahead and I'm going to descend down to 2100 because we will go ahead and fly the approach and do a touch and go. So a couple thoughts as I'm getting down to 2100 to intercept Nino is, for whatever reason, I was probably overcomplicating what I was doing in the GPS, so lesson learned for me. And again, so I think key here is don't need to overcomplicate the buttonology. I'm going to try this out in the 430, 530s and the club planes next time I fly, just to see if there was some reason that habit of deleting the holds came into play. But again, I think what we demonstrated today is there's 2 ways. Obviously, the third way to enter a hold is just activate the hold in the flight plan, but you don't necessarily need to do that since it will activate on its own if you hit the suspend button prior to that fix. And then obviously as you're going back to that fix, if we hit the unsuspend button, it will continue to fly the approach. So now the second part of this, flying this approach, to remind everybody, is I'm going to go fuel pump on. This is an LPV, or not, is not an LPV approach. So as a LNAV approach, we do have steps, and obviously you don't have to race down to the altitudes, but you cannot fly below the altitudes. And as I mentioned before, the WASP GPS does a nice job of giving you a glide path profile, but again, it's important to remember that Rudju is not the last fix in that approach. So again, just to call myself out, I failed to mention that the last time I flew this VOR 29 approach. Okay, so with that being said, as we talked about before, The altitudes that we just need to be mindful of is at Nino, the hold altitudes are up between 1,600 and 6,000. So I'm going to get down to, or I'm sorry, 2,100 and 6,000. So I'm going to get down to 2,100 and hold at until we cross Nino, and then the next altitude at Raju is 1,600, and then Zorlo is 980. Again, we will smooth that glide path down to that altitude utilizing the WASP-generated glide path, but remember that is just guidance. It's not the glide path like you would get in an LTV approach. Okay, so our next altitude is 1,600, so I will go ahead and dial 1,600 in here. Once we cross Nino and start heading to Raju, I will go ahead and begin our descent to 1,600. And we're going to go mixture full rich, fuel pump is on, landing lights on. Okay, there's crossing Nino, so we're going to go ahead and descend down to 1,600 now. So,
left downwind, 28 Novo.
So part of the conversation here is if we didn't have a WASP GPS or this glide path, what would you do? So the one option is you could obviously do step downs to each altitude. The way I was trained and the approach I like to take is to, again, make that as close to a 3-degree glide path as possible. The nice thing with Garmin Pilot, as you see in the vertical profile here, it also shows you what that 3-degree line looks like going from Raju down to the descent altitude. And I think that, okay, so we're going to hold at I'm just leveling off so we don't bust through 1,600. So that would be the approach I would do if I didn't have this, any type of vertical guidance in the instrument panel. We're still 4.5 miles from Raju, so we have plenty of time, so we're just going to hold this altitude. And then, just as a reminder, after Raju, the next altitude would be 980 at Zorlo, so we will dial in 980, and then our final altitude is, the MBA is 540. And so the way we're set up, it is a VFR day. I can already see the runway. But the nice thing here is this 3-degree glide path is depicted from Raju, so we should see the glide path bar start to activate and come down as we get closer. And Robbinsville traffic, Tomahawk 96 X-ray is over the Robbinsville VOR. We're doing the RNAV GPS into 29. We'll keep an eye out for traffic in the pattern, Robbinsville. Okay, so we're coming up to Raju. We see the glide path bar coming down. Again, if we didn't have the guidance here, I would just fly like a, try to keep a constant descent profile, getting down to the MDA, making sure I don't cross any of the altitudes that are of issue. So I'm going to put 1,000 foot in for the next altitude, just so that rings in case we get low. We cannot go below 980 until we pass Zorlo. And so we'll continue our flight path in. We just crossed Raju, and so the next fix is Zorlo. The altitude on that is 980 feet. Again, if we fly the glide path that's depicted by the GPS onto the GI 275, it should get us there, but we will keep an eye out to make sure we don't cross Zorlo low.
Landing
or
traffic,
low.
Cherokee 37 Whiskey, turning left base 27, landing traffic.
So as I talk about, this is one of the nice...
Here's 545 shut alpha is departing to the west with traffic.
So this is one of the nice things I like about the smart charts at Garmin Pilot. It just gives you that vertical profile. Gives you that vertical profile so you're not busting altitudes and have a good visual.
Turning final 27, landing traffic. Robbinsville traffic, A1 Lima, turning crosswind 29, Robbinsville. And Linden traffic, 3 Mike Kilo's coming off the Linden route. We'll be over the Walmart, landing at the Runway plant. Linden traffic.
And Robbinsville traffic, Tomahawk is 2 mile final, runway 29, Robbinsville.
Westbound traffic, White Skyhawk 540 Chile Foxtrot is 3 miles to the southeast. Check downwind for 25.
Picture full ridge.
Downwind 25.
Lights and fuel pump are on.
Somerset traffic, Cherokee 41 Romeo, final for runway 30, Somerset. Atlanta traffic.
We are now a little bit high, but
we're going to be over the numbers of 9, landing at the Runway plant, Linden traffic. Robbinsville traffic, 81 Lima, downwind 29, Robbinsville.
And Robbinsville traffic, Tomahawk's a 1 mile final, 29, Robbinsville. Okay, so we'll do a full stop landing, taxi back, and then head back to Doylestown.
Civil traffic, 582 Lima Papa, about 4 miles to the southeast.
Okay, good flaps 1.
About 45 downwind for 2. Double.
Go flaps 2, we're at 70. Get over the trees and then we can let it settle down.
Robbinsville traffic, 81 Lima, turning base 29, Robbinsville.
Alright guys, hope you enjoyed watching how we set up the RNAV GPS approach into Trenton Robbinsville on the RNAV 29 approach. Again, want to thank the viewers who've questioned some of the things I was doing or just putting some reminders in there. The one shout I want to do is to Midlife Flyer. He was the one who kind of first started questioning why I was deleting the hold out of the GPS, and then also he and I had a little bit of a comment about the being that it's an LNAV approach and not an LPV approach, that to pay attention to those fixes and not rely solely on the glide slope provided by the GPS and the attitude indicator. So all good things. I think for me, one of the comments for me, or one of the thoughts for me is, I got to figure out why I was getting in the habit of removing the holds on when I was going to the final approach. I'm not sure if that's because I had issues with one of the other GPSs. So next time I fly in one of the club planes, I'm going to play around with the 430s and 530s to see if there is something going on there, or if it's just a weird habit I picked up because maybe one time I activated the hold and it threw me off. Like I mentioned earlier, this plane does not have an autopilot, so the tendency to get thrown into a hold unexpectedly is a lot less likely, but I think for me it's just good GPS discipline, and so I appreciate that, because again, I think as pilots we always got to continue to learn. We also got to watch out for some complacencies or bad habits we develop. So so again, my reminder, or my final thought here is, if you have constructive feedback, please provide it. You're going to make me a better pilot, and or another pilot who's watching is going to pick up something that they can do better. So I have no shame in saying, hey, maybe I did a couple of these things wrong or differently than what others would do. But I think what's more important is we definitely know what the capabilities of our equipment is and the way we approach this. So with that being said, again, I appreciate everyone who watches, who provides feedback. Keep it educational. If you're going to provide feedback, it's all about making us better pilots and helping the community, the aviation community here. So until then, please like, subscribe, and I hope to see you again soon.